Star at the TACE conference, and she is definitely a rock star. And she's coming up right now.
And she's getting a video camera.
Angie Whitney from TrainerAngie.com.
Hi there. All right, so I want to make sure the microphone's not popping in anybody's ears. Are we okay like this? Yes. All right, so I'm going to be presenting on emotional intelligence, but I have to get my emotional intelligence out of the way first. There is a Hatco hat here, and for those of you that don't know who Hatco is, Hatco makes these beautiful Stetson hats. And they do Stetson and they do Wrangler. And they are one of the clients that we are most proud of here at Richland College to have as part of our team. They were also the first client I trained at Richland College. And if you don't know it, hice todo el entrenamiento completamente en español y voy a hacer toda la presentación en español si vale para todos nosotros. I think 2 people got that. The whole gist of what I just said was I did all of my training over at Hatco in Spanish. We did leadership, we did safety, customer service, first aid, CPR, and all of that's been done in Spanish for them. So it just shows the flexibility of what we can do through workforce development. And just having that pool of trainers that can come in and do it in any language makes it even that much better. Because it's about making our community stronger and safer when you're training from a safety perspective. All right, so we're gonna figure these toys out, and I'm gonna walk you through a little bit of emotional intelligence. I love asking this question up front. How many of you are familiar with emotional intelligence? Okay, good, so we've got a lot of familiarity. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna laymanize it for you, because I think one of the things that Pat was talking about earlier was the difference between education and training. Are we educators? Are we trainers? How do we relate all of those pieces? And trying to explain that to folks when they look at us and they go, but you're a junior college, what can you do for me? And it's understanding that training and education are the same thing, but they're different. Training is one of those things that it's less academic, but we can use it right now. So I've taken emotional intelligence and I've made it right now. Taken Daniel Goleman's concepts and made them right now. Because if you've ever tried to read any of those emotional intelligence, I think the book he's got out right now is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. You get about 10 pages into it, and the theory just bogs you down. So no theory here. All right, so let's see if I can get this all figured out. Bravo. So we're going to talk, I'm going to pull this off so I can walk around with it. Is that correct? Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, and I'm going to talk about it from the position of there's 2 parts to the brain. We're going to work through these 2 parts of the brain, and then talk about the emotional part, the rational part, and how do we move data from the emotional part into the rational part of our brains. That's going to help you all as salespeople. That helps us help get information, so when they ask us that question, what does a junior college have anything to do with training? We can help them better understand the differences between what our part of the campus does and what the academic side of the campus does. Talk about rational and irrational conversations. Emotional intelligence is one of those topics that's so important. I've been doing this training for just about every type of business you can imagine, because emotional intelligence is about leadership. The previous speaker talked so heavily about leadership. Pat talked about leadership. Texas Workforce Development talks about leadership. What is leadership and how do we become better leaders? We have to become emotionally intelligent. If you're a police officer, you have to be emotionally intelligent. If you're a firefighter, you have to be emotionally intelligent. If you're working on a production line, you have to be emotionally intelligent. If you're a parent, a sister, a brother, an aunt, and uncle, you have to be an aunt or an uncle. I guess you can only be one or the other. So let's take a look at this. Daniel Goleman, who is the guru of emotional intelligence, he talks about it, and here's what he says. He says, emotional intelligence is your ability to recognize and understand emotions and your skill using this awareness to manage yourself and your relationships with others. It's how good are you at checking that mirror reflection and matching it up with what people see through the two-way mirror, through the two-way window. So does what you think is happening inside your head match what the people around you are seeing? That's a great place to start when you start linking emotional intelligence to sales, to customer service, or to leadership. So Daniel Goleman asked that question: how good are we at interpreting the situation around us and then managing ourselves to that situation? He also asks, how well do we react to that information? So if I think I'm doing great in this presentation and people's heads are nodding off, do I just sit there and say, oh, that's because I had a really big breakfast? Or do I step up to the plate and say, ugh, maybe it's me? And if it is me, and I think it's me, can I adjust it? We can take it to a more emotional level and ask the question, do I notice that the knife is in? Am I the one that chooses to pull the knife out, or do I choose to twist it around? Or do I not even notice? The better I get at figuring out how to get the knife out, the more emotionally intelligent I become. So emotional intelligence breaks it down into 4 quadrants. We have our self-awareness quadrant, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Again, self-awareness, that mirror image. When I look in the mirror, what do I see? Gotta remember, you gotta look in the mirror. When I got up this morning, I had to pick one of 20, 22 different hats. It's tough, man. You walk through that plant and they're making a hat, and you're like, I really like that color. And then what's really bad is the plant manager comes over to you, and he is very emotionally intelligent and realizes, I don't know, big emotional spin right now. And he goes, oh, you like that color? Come on, let's go pick some stuff out to put on it. I'm a girl. He knows what to do with it. So am I aware of what the images that I'm putting out, and am I aware of what they're seeing? Those cover my first 2 boxes, self-awareness and self-management. When I drop down into social awareness, how do I see that others see me? So am I honest with myself that when I look at you and you're looking at me, I'm seeing the twisted face? Does that mean I'm too loud? Does that mean I'm too pretty? What does it mean? Does that mean I'm too scary? And am I translating that? In that relationship management box, that last box, how do I adjust to it? How good am I at putting all those pieces together and actually doing the right thing? And doing the right thing consistently. The more consistent I become, the higher my emotional intelligence scores. All right, let's put this all together. Gotta set this down and need my hands for this one. I am truly Spanish. 2 parts to the brain. We've generally heard 2 parts of the brain being right and left. That's not the thing we're talking about here. We're going way, way, way more basic than that. We're talking about how our brain handles data. So we have this emotional part of our brain. If you want to take a visual of it, think of it as all the information inside your skull. That's our emotional part of our brain. That emotional bubble is rubbery like a balloon. So it stretches, it shrinks, it twists, it turns, it changes shapes. It's never the same. In its most calm, relaxed state, it just fits perfectly, and that's it. We then have a rational bubble. Think of the rational bubble as a golf ball. That's it. It's that size, it's a fixed size, it doesn't change shape, it doesn't change sizes. It is it. It is one size of a golf ball, all the rest of it's emotional. Starts telling you a little bit about what's going on in our heads and what's going on in somebody else's head. The emotional bubble is again different from the rational bubble in that it has 2 exits. It's got the one exit that shoots data straight out the mouth. We're pretty good at that one, aren't we? It's got an exit, little tiny one that goes up to the rational bubble. It's not that my graphics are bad. I intended the exit to the mouth to be larger than the exit to the rational bubble because it is in its standard, shrunken, normal, non-emotional state. You have a larger exit shooting out the mouth than you do up to the rational. It starts explaining a lot of our conversations, doesn't it? The rational bubble has one exit. Fixed size, fixed everything. It just takes the information after it's rationalized it, and it shoots it out the mouth. That's it. Here's where it gets really, really tricky. All data. So there was a fire truck, we've trained them here at Richland College. In fact, most of those cars that go by, we've trained right here on emotional intelligence. All information, all data, goes into the brain through the emotional bubble. All data enters the brain through the emotional bubble. Male or female, this is not related to gender, okay? When we talk emotional bubble, we're not talking emotions like boo-hoo, wah-wah. We're talking about how the data is laced. What words, what's adjectives, what adverbs, how it's hitting your brain. Not her brain, not his brain, but your brain. If life were only that simple, data comes in, it goes either up to the rational or goes out through the emotional. But it's not. Because in order to get data from the emotional to the rational, we have to go through a funnel. Okay, that's better. In your kitchen, to move something big to something small, you use a funnel. Okay, that's what happens in our heads. But we do the Brita funnel thing here. We take in our brains, our funnel is filled with filters. Filled with filters, okay? What, if you had the opportunity to guess at this, non-biologically speaking, okay, non-physically speaking, what would you guess those filters are made of? It's a non-rhetorical question. Experience, okay? What else are those filters made of? What was it?
Prejudices.
Prejudices, absolutely. What else? Values. Upbringing. And add some more to it. Your religion, your race, your height, your hair color, your eye color, your choice of wardrobe. Your filters are your filters. Because she said it first, they're based on your experiences. You have been building filters every minute of every day of your whole life. Every day of every minute of your whole life. So if you look at the person next to you, what do you know about their filters? I don't know, everybody laughs, goes, right? You know that the filters of the person standing next to you, even if they were your identical twin, are different. Because that person sitting next to you has had completely different experiences. I laugh about this because when I first moved to Dallas, I made friends with this girl. We're still very, very close friends 20 years later. She's about 5'2". And you have to know that about Suzanne. And I asked her, I said, come on, you've been here forever. Why don't you introduce me around? You know, I'd like to find somebody to date. Help me meet some men. So she'd have me over and we'd go out on double dates. And all the guys she was setting me up with were like 5'8", 5'9". And I kept saying to her, I'm like, what's the deal? She said, you wanted a tall guy. I'm like, what about 5'8" makes this guy tall? Now you get why I told you how tall she was, right? Because my filters, the same word, tall, my filter of tall, 6 feet plus, I don't know, 3 inches of cowboy boot heel, make me 6'3". That means tall starts at 6'4". Because average is 6'3". Her version of tall, 5'8", was a skyscraper. To her, 5'8" was my Shaquille O'Neal. So we had to work through this. But this helps us understand a lot of what's going on. Now remember, we haven't even started talking about the emotionally laced conversation. All we're talking about is our filter conversation. So you'll notice I also added a couple words on this screen. When we release data from our emotional bubble through our mouths, we call that a reaction. When we release data out of the rational bubble, we call that a response. Some very key differences between those two words, aren't there? Oh, I have a gut reaction to this. If you watch NCIS, he has a gut, Jethro Gibbs has gut reactions to everything. Not always right. In Jethro's case, most of the time they're right. You watch NCIS. The idea is a reaction required no rational thought. A response requires you to take that information, use the energy to shove it up through the filters, get it up into that rational bubble, and then make some sort of response that works and share it. All the time you're doing that, you're checking your image, you're checking how they're responding, you're making sure you're not sticking the knife in and twisting it around, and if you see the knife going in, you're pulling it back. All of this is going on while you are moving data from the emotional to the rational, because that's what's making you emotionally intelligent. The more you respond, the more emotionally intelligent you become. The less you respond, the less emotionally intelligent you are, the more you react. Which gets us more likes on Facebook? A reaction or a response? A reaction. The more you react, the more wild your accusations, the better the story, the more volatile the story, the more likes you get, the more emotional it becomes. Another thing you want to notice at the way we talk. Think about all the previous presenters that we've had. They talked about making your customer feel good. They want to feel part of the experience. They want to feel like they're following the trends. Why are we so worked up about feeling? Look at how big the emotional part of our brain is. Look at how tiny the rational part of our brain is. From a customer service perspective, is it more important to give the customer what they need, to tell them they're right and then figure it out later? Or is it more important to help a customer understand what's going to work best for them, or what's the best thing you, your company, or your business can do, as long as they still feel good about the experience? And if you don't think it's all about feeling good, think about when you've called customer service. Think about when you've had an experience. You went and you spent, I don't know, $600 on a TV, okay? You got it home, you set it up, you got it all put up on the wall. I mean, that's a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of money. You got it up there and there's a little white line that goes down your screen. How you feeling right now? Your emotional bubble's what, about this big? Data's doing the full spin in there. You pick up the phone and you call them, are you nice? You say, I want a full refund. Okay, so let me ask you this question. Is a full refund going to fix your problem?
No.
Yeah. So we don't have to give you what you ask for. We give you what you need, and we make you feel good about the experience. That's all about being emotionally intelligent from a customer service perspective. And it's also about making sure that our customers don't walk away from us. Because the better they feel, the more often they come back and do business. The worse they feel, you become a commodity and they can go to somebody else. So, here's where it gets tricky. All data doesn't come into our brains all nice and smooth and calm. Because somebody's upset, somebody didn't get their cup of coffee, somebody drove in traffic, something happened between picking up the phone and calling you, between you're walking into a meeting and not, between face to face, whatever the conversation is you're happening. So as that information comes in, it goes into a spin. The hotter the data, the more emotional the data, the faster the spin. The faster the spin, the more the emotional bubble expands. What happens to the exit going up to through the filtering system into the rational bubble when that emotional bubble expands? It's teenier and tinier. The tinier it gets, the bigger the other exit gets. You had those arguments, those conversations, you went on and on and on, and all of a sudden you went, that's what they meant? There it is in picture format, right up there. The less emotional the data, the less the spin. The more emotional the data, the bigger the spin, the faster the spin, the more the expansion of the bubble. The idea is for us to keep our emotional bubbles small and keep the spin down. video clip. We're going to try to use it and see how it works on this bigger board. So what happens so often to us is you have a conversation with someone. Have you ever had it to where you've said something and they've heard something else? Welcome to the funnel concept. Of course they heard something else. It's going through their funnels. It's going through their funnel, their filters. Your funnel, your filters. Your filters are not the same. So you might say something that you intended to be taken one way, and they heard something totally different. I don't know, should I try the video? Corey, are you there? Yeah. Oh. We're back to the wrong one. It's gone. You know what, let's forget the video. It doesn't add that much to it. Never mind. All right. Corey, are you doing that to me? Okay, good. So let's look at this a different perspective. So I'm having a conversation with you and you're hearing something different that I'm talking about. How can I fix that? By listening, okay? Listening is a good way to do it. There are other ways that I can fix that? Ask them to repeat it back. Ask them some questions. You guys are absolutely right. Take it to a personal level. If you're having an argument with someone, or you're in a heated conversation, what do your friends tell you to do? Take a deep breath. Calm down. I heard somebody say, step back. Count to 10. So our friends are pretty darn smart. Because here's what happens. Well, here's what happened. Stephen Covey, you guys heard of him, 7 Habits? There's a whole section in his 7 Habits that talk about the pause. Because the pause is epic. So the pause happens somewhere between the stimulus, the data coming into our brain, and whether we are responding or reacting. So we've got a stimulus, and we have an R. The idea is we really want to be responding more than we're reacting. So we want to figure out how to do that pause. The pause does not have to be 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be 10 seconds. It can be a breath. It can be a sneeze. It can be a cough. It can be an eye blink. The idea is to pause after the stimulus hits the emotional part of the brain. Let the emotional part of the brain shrink down. Let the spinning stop. Open the exit to the rational part of our brain and allow the data to shift up to the irrational part of our brain. So I was having this conversation, watch your emotional brains right now, next words out of my mouth, with a motorcycle police officer. What just happened when I said those 3 words? Right? Because motorcycle cops, what is their primary job? Really? I thought a motorcycle police officer's job was to protect and serve. Do I have a different impression of a police officer than you guys have? Are my filters different than your filters? All right, so anyway, let's go back. So this police officer, he says to me, he goes, he says, I know this really, really well. And I said, you do? He says, yep. I have irrational conversations with rational people all day long. And I said, what? And he goes, no, I said that backwards. And I said, oh. He says, I have rational conversations with irrational people all day long. And I said, explain that one to me. He says, all right. He says, I flick my lights and my sirens on, and I pull up. Guy finally pulls over to the side of the road. He says, first thing I say to him is license and insurance. And I said, okay, sounds good so far. He says, second question I asked, do you know why I pulled you over? What's the answer? All of us, for the most part, say, no! Really? This guy's been doing this a while. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can emotionally inflame you again. He writes 4,000 tickets a year. You knew it, right? He's got a quota, right? He knows that's what you're thinking. Because he sees your emotional bubble doing this because you just lied to him. The fact you were in the left-hand lane, bing, 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 you didn't even notice the cars in 3 right lanes next to you? When he pulled you over, you were speeding. You were not just speeding, you were probably breaking the speed limit by over 20 miles an hour. So when he asked you, do you know why I pulled you over? You reacted, you didn't respond. You said, maybe I'll lie. Because lying is gonna get me out of this. So he already knows you're irrational. And then he'll say, well, you were doing 80. And the response is, was I going that fast? Really? To be very honest, you're probably not lying. And if you are, you're not intending to lie. What's happened is, let me rephrase that. What happened when the lights and sirens went on behind you? Your heart rate goes up. Your adrenaline starts cranking up, right? As soon as that adrenaline cranked up, what happened to your emotional bubble? She said it was this big. Yep, it got huge. So all of a sudden, you weren't rationalizing information. You were now reacting to the data. You weren't responding to it. You just went into full reaction mode. They get that. And so that's why they ask that question. Do you know why I pulled you over? It's the opportunity to slow the brain down. It's the opportunity for them to then have a nice, calm, flowing conversation with you. Because they get 90 seconds with you on the side of the road. The quicker they're out of there, the safer they are. Now I want to go back to something. He writes 4,000 tickets a year. My brain funnels out a little bit different. So I asked him, I said, on what roads? He told me he works the freeway. And I said, okay, so on any given day, how many cars travel that road? That freeway? He said 30 to 40,000. I said, you suck at your job, don't you? He looked at me and says, nobody has ever said that to a motorcycle police officer. And I said, so let's do some math. You have 30,000 on the low side cars per day. You work 5 days a week. So 150,000 cars drive on your street. We're going to multiply 5 times 52. The math's getting too big to do off the top of my head. I said, but it's a gigantic number. And you're writing a measly 4,000 tickets a year? What are you doing with the rest of your time? Okay, I no longer drive the streets of Irving. Because he's looking for me. He told me, he's like, what car do you drive? I'm like, oh, it's a good thing my friend drove me today, because you will never know. So the idea behind it, the whole idea behind the concept of emotional intelligence that I'm trying to share with you is realize that the pause is epic, and to figure out how to make that pause work for you, to make you more emotionally intelligent. Because the better you get at managing your bubble and the person you're talking to's bubble, the easier your conversation becomes, the more effective your communication becomes, the greater the leader you become. Questions? Comments? Nothing? They want to dance, no, they want to eat. And I'm like 30 minutes between eating and now. So anyway, here's the deal with this. Paul May, oh, my fellow cowboy hat person. Yes, sir, Paul.
Came in toward the end and obviously aware of emotional intelligence. Got a staff, won't name where they are. That we've got a lot of rational folks and then one unnamed emotional person. How do you square that in a training environment?
How do you square that in a training environment? All right, so he's got one emotional staff member and a series of rational staff members. How do you make that work? The emotional one has to do all the work. The emotional one really has to be the one to step up to the plate and say, you know what, I really have to work on my pause. And there's a lot of ways you can work on your pause. For some of us, when we get really wound up, we go for a run, we go for a bike ride. That's an extreme pause. That's because you're having a really, really bad day. But it's understanding, what is your pause? What's the one? Nike teaches us when you're running to have a power song. So when you get into that run, and it just starts getting a little bit goofy and you're not feeling right about it and you just are losing your energy to hit your power song. Mine happens to be a Pitbull song, of course. So, because then you think about what he looks like. See, the emotional bubble just took over right there. So the idea is, know your pause. What is your pause? For me, when I'm up in front of a room and I get a participant that starts making me crazy, my pause, I do this. It's my reminder to breathe. It's my reminder. If you see me doing this, there's not very many people that know this about me. I think he knows it about me from sales calls. When somebody in a sales call really gets me riled up, oh, we don't have any needs, we're perfect, we don't need leadership. Really? Right there you're telling me you do. I would do this. And this is my reminder to bring my bubble down and to let the data go to my rational. Every one of us has a different pause, but what you have to remember is that pause is epic. Thanks, great question. Any others? All right, I'm about ready to get the cowbell. I will ask you for one more thing. We're talking about following. I'd like you guys to follow me on Facebook. It's a public page. You can go to TrainerAngie, and you have the opportunity to follow. I have articles. Daniel Goleman gets put up there all the time. There's videos. I'm constantly refreshing the skills that you learn in leadership and sales and safety and first aid. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Really. All right. I see Kay Coder in the back. Gosh, I've known Kay for a long time. I've been in school almost 19 years. And she teaches diversity classes for corporate services and sociology classes at Richland College, but she also teaches line dancing and has been for a long time. So we created a space here so the city of Garland can watch us dance. Let's all go over there. And Kay's gonna get her music going. She's got an easy one, and it's gonna progressively get harder.